My Tesla tried to kill me on a moonless back road, steering itself into the woods while my hands fought a wheel that refused to obey. When it finally stopped, the screen flashed an address I knew by heart. It was the apartment my brother disappeared from 5 years ago. And when I stumbled inside, shaking and sweating, I found the place already waiting for me, lights on, door unlocked, and a single sentence typed on the wall monitor like a confession. If you're here, they found me. Now they'll come for you too. I'm Graham Halstead, 71 years old, a grandfather to 2 kids who still believe a front porch light means safety, a widower who still sets 2 mugs on the counter before he remembers. 5 years ago, my younger brother, Aaron, vanished. No note, no body, just an empty apartment and a phone call I replayed until the battery died, his voice low, ragged, saying my name like it hurt. Graham, if anything happens to me, do not trust. And then nothing. A click. A silence that swallowed the rest of my life. The police called it a grown man's choice. His job called it a personal matter. His landlord shrugged. Everyone wanted the simple version, a brilliant engineer with too many demons who decided to disappear. I never believed it. Last week I found him. Not in some hidden cabin or distant city. Not under an alias. Not as the ghost I'd been chasing in half-lit parking lots and online forums. I found him in the fluorescent glare of a county hospital, listed as John Doe, brought in by an ambulance after he'd been found wandering barefoot near the interstate, blood dried under his nails and a bruise blooming behind his left ear like a dark flower. He stared at me when I said his name. Not like a man faking. Not like a man playing a game. Like a man hearing a language he once knew and could no longer speak. Aaron, I whispered, because I needed to believe the universe had finally given something back. He blinked slowly. His eyes were the same, gray with that faint green ring around the iris, but there was nothing behind them that recognized me. I don't, his voice cracked. I don't know you. That sentence did something to me that I cannot properly describe. It did not land like a punch. It landed like a collapse. A nurse tried to guide me away. I refused. I sat with him for hours. I brought photos. I told him stories. I recited the names of people only our family would know. I described the pine tree we planted behind our childhood house and how he used to carve his initials in the bark every summer. He listened politely, like you listen to a stranger on a bus who's confusing you for someone else. They ran tests. They asked questions. They found no identification, no phone, no wallet. His fingerprints were not in their database, which was its own kind of horror. A man does not live 64 years without leaving any trace the system can find, unless someone scrubbed him. When the doctor finally pulled me aside, she spoke carefully, the way medical people do when they're about to hand you a truth that can't be put back. He has retrograde amnesia, she said, but it's not typical. There's evidence of trauma, and there's something else. She showed me a scan, a tiny crescent of foreign material near the skull behind his left ear. Not shrapnel, not a fragment of bone, something placed there. A medical implant? I asked. Her mouth tightened. Not one I can identify. We'd like to keep him for observation. I looked back through the glass at my brother sitting on the bed, hands folded, staring at nothing as if his mind had been emptied and left open. I thought of my grandkids at home. Lily, 12, who still slept with a nightlight. Noah, 8, who asked me questions about his grandmother like she might walk back through the door one day. And I thought of Aaron's last phone call. If anything happens to me. Can I take him home? I asked. The doctor hesitated. We can't stop you if he's discharged and you assume responsibility. But Mr. Halstead, if someone did this to him, you need to consider that they may come looking. I nodded as if I understood. I did not. Not yet. 2 days later, I bought him clothes. I signed papers. I brought him into my house like a stranger I loved. I put him in my guest room, where the quilt still smelled faintly of my wife's lavender soap. I made soup he didn't taste. I asked questions he couldn't answer. He was gentle, which almost made it worse. He apologized constantly. He watched my hands when I talked, like he was trying to learn me through movement. At night, I heard him pacing, stopping, starting again, as if his body remembered being hunted even if his mind didn't. On the third morning, I drove my Tesla to the grocery store. It was a Model Y. Not new, not a status symbol. I'd bought it because my knees were bad, and the driver assist made longer trips easier. Because I trusted engineering. Because I used to be an electrical safety analyst before retirement, and I believed machines followed rules. That morning, the sky was low and iron gray. Snow threatened but didn't fall. I remember thinking the world looked unfinished. I pulled out of my driveway and onto the main road, one hand on the wheel, the other steadying a list I'd scribbled on a receipt. Half a mile from home, the screen chimed. Autopilot engaged. I had not touched it. My first thought was that I'd brushed the stalk by accident. It happens. I reached to disengage. Nothing. I pressed the brake. The pedal resisted like it had turned to stone. The car did not slow. It accelerated, smooth and deliberate, like a decision had been made without me. A cold line formed down my spine. Disengage, I said aloud, like the car could hear shame. The wheel turned sharply to the right. My hands tightened. Muscles in my arms flared. I pulled back hard enough to strain my shoulder. The wheel held firm and continued its turn, fighting me with a force that was not assistive. It was controlling. The Tesla left the main road and took the exit toward the old industrial stretch, where warehouses sat half empty and the streetlights flickered like tired eyes. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it above the cabin's quiet hum. I stabbed at the touchscreen. Nothing responded. The interface lagged, then froze. A spinning circle appeared like a mockery. Then the screen went black. No speed, no map, no warning lights. Just darkness. The car kept moving. Stop, I said, and the word sounded ridiculous inside a sealed machine that had decided I was cargo. My phone was in the cup holder. I grabbed it and tried to dial 911. No service. That was impossible. I was still in town. I had never lost service here in my life. The Tesla took a turn I did not recognize. A back road, then another. Houses thinned. Streetlights vanished. Trees crowded in close, branches clawing at the edge of the headlights. It was taking me away from everything. My breath started coming in short bursts. My hands began to sweat. I tried the door handle, instinct more than logic, and of course it didn't open. A memory rose up uninvited. My granddaughter Lily asking me last month if cars could be hacked, because a boy at school said someone could take control of yours and drive you off a bridge. I'd smiled at her then. I told her it was not that simple. I was wrong. The road narrowed. Gravel began to pop under the tires. The car entered a stretch of woods I'd only seen on old hunting maps. Trees closed over the path like a tunnel. The headlights cut through branches and fog and made everything look like a staged nightmare. I tried the emergency trunk release. I tried the voice command. I tried to force the steering wheel until my hands ached. Nothing. Then, as suddenly as it started, the car slowed. It rolled to a stop in a small clearing I couldn't place, surrounded by pines and dead leaves. The engine remained silent. The air outside was thick and unmoving. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered back to life. Not the usual interface. A single black and white map. And an address. 2609 Morrow Street, Unit 4B. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Because I knew that address. It was Aaron's apartment. The one I'd walked into 5 years ago and found emptied like a staged erasure. The one I'd begged the landlord to let me search again. The one I'd stood outside of on anniversaries like a fool, as if grief could summon people back. The Tesla chimed softly, like it was proud of itself. Then it started moving again. It turned around in the clearing without my input and drove back out of the woods. This time, it didn't take me deeper. It took me straight to the city. It drove like it had done it 100 times. Smooth merges, exact lane changes, perfect timing at lights. It did not hesitate. It did not drift. A person would have hesitated. A person would have doubted. This machine did not. I kept my hands on the wheel anyway, not because it helped, but because it was the last human thing I could do. When it pulled up in front of Aaron's building, it parked itself with a clean precision that made me want to scream. The doors unlocked with a soft click. My breath came out in a shaky exhale. I sat there for a moment with my hands still on the wheel, feeling the last residue of control slip away. Then I got out. The building was a 4-story brick box with narrow windows. The kind of place you don't notice unless you're looking for it. The lobby smelled like stale carpet and old mail. The security door should have required a code. It opened as if it recognized me. My skin prickled. I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, each step dragging a year of fear behind it. Unit 4B, the same door. The same faint scratch near the knob where Aaron had once cursed after dropping his keys. I lifted my hand to knock. The door swung inward before my knuckles touched it. Lights were on. That had not been the case 5 years ago. Back then, the apartment had been dark and cold and emptied. Now it looked lived in. Not neatly, not comfortably, like someone had been surviving inside it while waiting for the end. The air hit me first. Ozone, dust, and the faint bitter smell of overheated electronics. The living room was dominated by a desk that hadn't been there before. 3 monitors, a tower computer open on the side like its ribs had been pried apart. Wires braided across the floor. A stack of hard drives, each labeled by hand with dates and short phrases I didn't understand. On the far wall, a large whiteboard covered in arrows and diagrams and written names. Some I recognized. One I did not expect. Graham. My name, written in block letters, underlined twice. My throat went dry. There was movement behind me. I spun so fast my neck protested. Aaron stood in the doorway, framed by the hall light like a ghost that had learned how to breathe again. He wore the sweater I'd given him, the one that made him look like someone trying to remember how to be normal. His eyes moved around the apartment with a slow, dawning alarm. "This is," he whispered. "You lived here," I said. "This is your place." He stepped forward, staring at the whiteboard, at the monitors, at the machines. His face tightened like something inside him recognized danger, even if his mind didn't. Then he looked at me. "I've been here," he said softly. "I've been here before." I felt a tremor of hope so sharp it almost hurt. "You remember?" I asked. His hand rose to the back of his ear. He pressed his fingers against that bruise that refused to fade. His jaw clenched. His eyes squeezed shut for a second as if the act of reaching for memory was painful. Not like that," he said. "I remember the feeling, like I wasn't supposed to leave." I took a step toward the desk. The main monitor was awake. A cursor blinked on a blank document. Except it wasn't blank. A single line sat at the top. "If you're here, they found me. Now they'll come for you too." Below it, a folder icon labeled Guardian, another labeled Morrow Woods Route. My stomach turned over. "This is why the car drove me," I whispered. "This address." It was on the screen. Aaron's eyes snapped to mine. "The car?" he asked, and his voice had a sudden edge, like a blade drawn from a drawer. My Tesla. It took control. It drove me into the woods and then brought me here." He went very still, the kind of stillness that belongs to men who have lived through threat and learned not to waste movement. Then he crossed the room in 3 quick steps and grabbed the mouse, moving it with practiced speed. The Guardian folder opened. Inside was a maze of files, code, logs, and something labeled fail-safe key. Aaron stared at it, breathing shallowly, like the sight of it made his lungs forget how to work. His hands began to shake. Then, very quietly, he said, "It wasn't supposed to do that." "What wasn't?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to use force." A chill ran through me. "You built this?" Aaron's gaze remained locked on the screen. He pressed his fingers to his temple. "I don't know, but my hands know where everything is." He clicked into another folder. A video file opened. It showed a road at night. The view was from a dash cam. A car drove through the same narrow logging trail I'd just been on. The same pines, the same clearing. Then the car stopped, and a man approached the driver's side window. He wore a hood, face obscured. But the way he moved, confident, practiced, made my skin tighten with recognition. He leaned toward the glass. The dash cam picked up his voice, muffled but clear enough. "Old man thinks he's clever. When he signs, we're done." I stared at the screen until my vision narrowed. "Old man," I whispered. Aaron's hand jerked away from the mouse as if it burned. "You were in danger before you even got in the car," he said, his voice low. "Who knows you drive that Tesla?" "Too many people," I almost said. But one name rose above the rest, heavy and unwanted. My son, Evan. Evan Halstead, 46 years old, my only child, the man who called me Dad, with a warm voice and dead eyes whenever he wanted something. Evan had been the one to insist I buy the Tesla 2 years ago. "Safer," he'd said. "Better for your reflexes." He'd helped me set it up. He'd linked it to my phone. He'd added his own account as a trusted driver, a feature I'd barely paid attention to. Because I trusted him. Because he was my son. Because I had buried my wife and clung to the one person left who looked like her. My mouth opened to speak Evan's name. That was when the apartment's front door handle moved. Just a small sound, metal shifting. Aaron froze, his head lifted, eyes widening. I heard it again, the subtle scrape of a key against a lock. Someone was outside, trying to get in. Aaron looked at me, and for the first time since I found him in the hospital, the blankness cracked enough for raw fear to show. "They're here," he whispered. The lock clicked. I moved without thought. I grabbed the nearest object I could find, a heavy metal wrench on the desk, used for something mechanical I didn't understand. Aaron darted toward the small hallway closet and yanked it open. Inside was not Coates. It was a hidden panel, a door within a door. He grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward it. "Move," he hissed. "Now!" I followed him, heart battering my ribs, the sound of the front door opening like a gunshot in the other room. A voice drifted in, calm and annoyed. "Check the desk. He always kept it close." Another voice, lower. "He won't be here. If he was, we'd have a hit." Aaron shoved me through the hidden door and into a narrow space that smelled of insulation and old wood. A maintenance crawl space, barely tall enough to crouch in. He slid the panel shut behind us, leaving a thin crack of light. We huddled in darkness, 2 old men holding our breath like children hiding from a storm. Footsteps moved through the living room, drawers opened, hard drives clinked, papers rustled. A man cursed softly, not loud, not crude, just sharp frustration. "They moved it," he said. Then another sound, the whine of a device powering on. The first voice spoke again, closer now. "Find the Guardian key. Without it, the remote layer is useless. The whole project is dead." Remote layer. My stomach tightened. My hands clenched around the wrench so hard my fingers hurt. Aaron leaned toward the crack and watched, eyes flicking like he was reading a scene he'd seen before. "They're not here for you," he breathed. "They're here for that." "For what?" I whispered. He didn't answer, because the footsteps stopped, right in front of the hidden panel. A shadow blocked the crack of light. The voice lowered. "I can hear you breathing." Every muscle in my body went cold. Aaron's hand tightened around my wrist like a vice. We held still. A long second passed, then another. The shadow shifted away. Footsteps retreated. A drawer slammed. "Nothing," the man said, irritation bleeding into anger. "This place is clean. He wiped it." The second voice responded with something I couldn't make out. Then the first voice said, "Fine. We do it the other way. Track the old man. He's the only loose end left." Track the old man. My throat tightened. Their footsteps moved toward the door. The apartment's front door opened again, then closed. Silence returned in a heavy wave. Aaron waited a full minute before he pushed the panel open again. He peered out cautiously, then stepped back into the living room. The place was trashed. Cables yanked, drawers pulled, papers scattered like dead leaves. But the computer was still on, and the Guardian folder was still open. Aaron moved to it, fingers flying. "I need to shut this down," he whispered, "if they get access." A sound came from the monitor. A soft alert tone. A new message popped up. "Access attempt detected. Failsafe active." Below it, a list of IP addresses and device IDs. One of the device names was labeled in plain text. "Evan's phone." My vision tunneled. It felt like the room tilted. "No," I whispered, because my mind wanted to reject it the way it rejects grief until it's too late. Aaron stared at the screen like he'd been punched. Then he looked at me, and the emptiness in his eyes was gone. In its place was something old and sharp. Recognition, not of my face, of the shape of betrayal. "He's connected," Aaron said, voice hollow. "He's been connected this whole time." I could barely breathe. "Evan wouldn't—" Aaron's gaze did not soften. "You don't know what people do when they're scared of losing what they think they own." I thought of Evan's recent visits, his questions, the way he'd hovered around my paperwork, the way he'd suggested, too casually, that I should sign a power of attorney just in case. I thought of him standing in my kitchen last month, looking at my family photos, his eyes briefly calculating before he smiled. I remembered a phrase my wife used to say when she didn't trust someone. "He's measuring you." My hands began to shake. Aaron stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the walls could hear. "Listen," he said. "They're not just stealing data. They're controlling cars. They're controlling lives. And now they know you're in the middle of it." I swallowed, forcing my mind to lock into something familiar. Problem solving. Action. The only way men like me survive fear is by turning it into steps. "Then we leave," I said. "We go to the police." Aaron's laugh was short and bitter. "We tried that." "We?" I asked. His face tightened. He pressed his fingers to the bruise behind his ear again. "I don't remember the details," he said. "But I remember the moment. I remember standing in a room with a badge on the wall. I remember trusting it. And then I remember waking up somewhere else, my name missing." My stomach sank. "Then who?" I asked. "Who do we go to?" Aaron looked back at the screen. He opened a file labeled Morrow Woods Route. Inside was a map. The same path the Tesla had taken. A route through the woods. A route away from cameras. A route that ended at this apartment. On the side of the map, in Aaron's handwriting, was a note. "Guardian only works once. After that, they adapt." Then another note. "Next safe house. Hartwell Storage." I stared at it. "A safe house?" I said. Aaron's lips pressed into a thin line. "A place he hid things." "He?" I echoed. Aaron looked at me, eyes dark. "Him," he said, and his voice shook. "Me." The idea was so strange it almost sounded like hope. That my brother, amnesiac, hunted, had planned for this, had left himself breadcrumbs, had turned technology into a lifeline. But beneath that hope was something colder. He had planned for being erased, which meant he'd expected it, which meant he'd known the people hunting him were capable of more than threats. I thought of my grandkids again. I thought of Evan's name on that screen, and I felt something in me harden the way metal hardens under heat. "Okay," I said, and my voice sounded older than I'd ever heard it. "Then we go to Hartwell Storage." Aaron hesitated. "They'll track you." "They already are," I said. "If I stay, they come here. If I go home, they come there. At least if we move, we choose the direction." Aaron stared at me for a moment. Then he nodded once. "Then we don't take your Tesla," he said. I almost laughed. Almost. Because the cruelest part was that I had no other car. The Tesla was the only vehicle I still drove regularly. Aaron's eyes flicked to the laptop again. "Unless," he said, and there was a flicker of something like grim satisfaction, "we make it ours again." He sat at the desk and typed with speed that did not belong to an amnesiac. The screen filled with lines of code. I watched him, feeling the strange dissonance of seeing my brother both broken and brilliant in the same body. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Cutting the leash," he said. "If Evan's phone is a control point, it's also a doorway. If they can reach in, I can reach out." A chill slid through me. "You can hijack it?" I asked. Aaron's jaw tightened. "I can lock it." He clicked a button. A new message appeared. "Remote access blocked. Trusted device list reset." Then another alert. "Failsafe key deployed." Aaron exhaled, shaky. "For now," he murmured. Outside, somewhere down on the street, a car engine started and drove away. Aaron grabbed the stack of labeled hard drives and shoved them into a canvas bag. He yanked open a drawer and pulled out a small black device about the size of a deck of cards. "What's that?" I asked. He stared at it like he didn't know the answer. Then he said, "A bridge." He tucked it into the bag. We moved fast after that. No time to clean, no time to think. We left through the back stairwell. The air outside was knife cold. The street looked normal, which made everything worse. My Tesla sat at the curb like a loyal animal pretending it hadn't just dragged me into the woods. I hesitated. Aaron did not. He walked straight to it, opened the driver's door, and slid in like he belonged there. I got in the passenger seat and the smell of the cabin hit me. Familiar, safe, now violated. The screen lit up. No warnings, no frozen interface. Just the normal map. Aaron looked at me, eyes steady. "If it tries again," he said, "you do not fight it. Fighting wastes time. You watch the screen, you watch the route, and you remember." "Remember what?" I asked. He stared ahead. "Where it wants to take you, because that's where the truth is." He put the car in drive. It pulled away smoothly. For the first time since the woods, it felt like we were the ones moving, not being moved. But my hands still shook in my lap. Because now I knew something I couldn't unknow. The thing that had taken control of my car was not a glitch. It was a hand. And that hand had my son's fingerprint on it. We drove across town to Hartwell Storage under a sky that looked like bruised steel. I kept checking mirrors, expecting headlights that stayed too close. Every car behind us felt suspicious. Every stoplight felt like a trap. Aaron sat rigid, eyes scanning the road with a vigilance that didn't need memory to exist. When we reached the storage facility, it was nearly empty. A chain-link fence, a keypad gate, a small office with a flickering neon open sign. Aaron moved with purpose toward Unit 117. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I don't," he said, but his hand was already punching in a code on the padlock. It clicked open. Inside was not furniture or old boxes. Inside was a wall of plastic bins, each labeled, a folding table, a duffel bag, and a metal case that looked like it belonged in a laboratory. Aaron's breath caught. He stepped inside and stared at the bins like they were a life he'd left behind. I walked in behind him, and my eyes landed on one label that made my stomach twist. Halstead Family. My last name. I swallowed. Aaron reached for the bin with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were photographs. Me, walking Noah to school. Lily, on my porch, holding a science fair project. My house, taken from the street. My Tesla in my driveway. Someone had been watching us long before this week. I felt the cold rage rise slow, heavy, and unstoppable. "They've been in my life," I whispered. "They've been around my children." Aaron rummaged deeper and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed emails, contracts, internal memos. The heading on the first one made my stomach drop. Heliox Autonomy. Internal Safety Review. I knew Heliox. Everyone did. They were the company making headlines about the future of hands-free driving, about safer roads, about human error eliminated. Evan had mentioned them twice in the last year with casual admiration. He'd said a friend was consulting for them. I'd never cared enough to ask more. Aaron flipped through the documents with frantic focus. Names, dates, accident reports. Then he pulled out a photo. A car mangled around a tree, snow on the ground, emergency lights. Beneath it a caption. Staged Event Test 9. Driver non-compliance narrative. My stomach clenched. Staged? Aaron's voice was barely a whisper. They weren't just testing. They were proving a story. That when the cars fail, it's always the driver's fault. He grabbed another folder. This one had a list. Events, locations, times. And next to each, a note in red ink. Remote layer active. Remote layer failed. Remote layer covered. I stared at the words until my eyes blurred. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "they can take control of a car." Aaron looked at me, and there was a grief there that memory could not erase. "Yes," he said, "and they used it. To stage crashes, to scare regulators, to silence people, to shape headlines, to make themselves untouchable." My hands clenched into fists. "And you found out," I said. "That's why you disappeared." Aaron's eyes flicked to the bruise behind his ear again. "I tried to stop it. I tried to pull evidence. I tried to leave a trail." He swallowed, voice tightening. "They didn't kill me," he said, "because a dead whistleblower is a martyr. They erased me, because an erased man is a warning." The storage unit felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. Then Aaron opened the metal case. Inside was a device I did not recognize. Sleek, medical, coldly expensive. And beside it, sealed in a clear container, was something that made my stomach lurch. A tiny crescent-shaped implant, the same shape the doctor had shown me on the scan. Aaron stared at it, breath shaking. "I think," he whispered, "I think they took it out, then put it back." My skin crawled. "They can do that?" I asked. Aaron's eyes remained fixed on the implant. "They can do whatever they want if they own the people meant to stop them." I felt the weight of the folder marked Halstead Family, and suddenly my mind snapped into another memory. Evan asking me last month if I'd updated my medical directives. Evan insisting I list him as my primary contact on everything. Evan smiling too quickly when I agreed. He wasn't just preparing for my old age. He was positioning himself as my handler. I turned away from the bins and stared at the storage unit's open doorway, half expecting my son to step in with that familiar smile and tell me it was for my own good. Instead, my phone vibrated. A call. Evan. My heart gave a hard, ugly thud. Aaron's head snapped up. His eyes locked onto the phone like it was a live wire. "Don't answer," he hissed. But my thumb had already moved on instinct. I pressed accept. "Dad," Evan said, his voice warm, calm, perfectly measured. "Where are you?" The question was gentle, but beneath it was something else. A hook, a leash. I forced my voice to steady. "I'm out." "Out where?" he asked, and the warmth sharpened slightly at the edges. "You weren't home. I stopped by. Lily and Noah were worried." My breath caught. "You went to my house?" I asked. "Of course," he said smoothly. "You didn't answer your phone earlier. I thought maybe you'd fallen. You know I worry about you." I looked at Aaron, who was shaking his head slowly, eyes hard with warning. I swallowed bile and kept my voice calm. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm running errands." A pause. Then Evan said, "Dad, I need you to listen carefully. There's been an incident. Your Tesla's telemetry flagged abnormal behavior. The manufacturer will want to review it. They'll likely contact you. If they do, you need to tell them you engaged Autopilot incorrectly. Understand?" My blood ran cold. He already knew. Not just that something happened, but exactly what happened, because he was part of it. "You want me to lie," I said quietly. Another pause, this one longer. Evan's voice softened, like he was speaking to a child. "I want you to be safe," he said. "Sometimes being safe means letting professionals handle things and not complicating them. You've had a stressful week. Finding that man at the hospital, taking him in." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles whitened. "That man is my brother," I said. Silence on the line. Then Evan exhaled slowly, and when he spoke again, the warmth was gone. "Dad," he said, "you need to come home. Right now." "Why?" I asked. "Because you're not thinking clearly," he said, voice crisp. "Because this is bigger than you. And because if you don't come home willingly, people will have to come get you." My stomach dropped into something like nausea. "People," I echoed. Evan's voice lowered. "Do you want your grandchildren to see that?" A cold fury rose behind my ribs, burning away fear like paper. "You leave them out of this," I said. Evan's tone did not change. "Then come home." I looked at Aaron and something passed between us, an understanding that didn't need memory or words. They had been watching. They had been planning. And now they were tightening the net. I took a breath, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I'll be there soon," I lied. Evan exhaled, satisfied. "Good. And Dad?" "Yes?" "Do not take that man anywhere. Do not speak to anyone. Just come home. We will figure it out." He hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long moment. Then I set it down on the storage unit table like it was contaminated. Aaron's voice was low. "He's not your son right now." I flinched because a part of me still wanted to defend Evan, still wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding, some coercion, some way this could be less monstrous. But the folder of surveillance photos sat open like a corpse. "No," I whispered. "He's not." Aaron stepped closer. "We have evidence," he said. "But evidence doesn't matter if we don't survive long enough to deliver it." I nodded slowly, mind shifting into a hard clarity. "Then we don't go home," I said. Aaron's jaw tightened. "Where do we go?" I thought of the one place in my life that still ran on loyalty and procedure, not money and influence. My old friend, Dean Mercer, retired state trooper, 50 years of habit, a man who still believed in doing the right thing even when it cost him. If anyone would listen without selling us out, it was Dean. "We go to Mercer," I said, "and we go now." Aaron grabbed the canvas bag of hard drives. He took the duffel from the storage unit. Inside it were things I didn't even want to identify yet. Tools for survival my brother had prepared as if he knew one day he'd have to run again. We locked the unit, and as we walked back toward the Tesla, I felt the weight of eyes on us. No one visible. But I knew better now. We drove fast. Halfway there, the Tesla screen flickered. My heart seized. Aaron's hand shot out and tapped a sequence on the console with muscle memory. The flicker stopped. He stared at the screen like a man daring it to betray him. "They'll try again," he murmured. "Let them," I said, because rage had replaced fear and it made me reckless. Aaron looked at me sharply. "No," he said. "Don't speak like that. They don't fail the way normal people fail. They learn. They adapt. They erase." I swallowed hard because his words hit too close. "They erased you," I whispered. Aaron's eyes softened, just slightly. "Not completely," he said. "I left pieces." We reached Dean's property just as dusk thickened into full night. His house sat on 10 acres outside town, surrounded by bare trees and fence lines that had been maintained by stubbornness and routine. Dean opened the door before we even knocked, his face already tense. He took one look at Aaron and went still. Then he looked at me. "Graham," he said quietly, "what have you brought to my doorstep?" I didn't waste time. "We're in trouble," I said, "and I think my son is part of it." Dean's eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. "Get inside," he said. "Now." We laid everything out on Dean's kitchen table. The documents, the hard drives, the photos, the implant container. Dean listened without interrupting, his face tightening with every page. When I finished, my voice raw, Dean stared at the papers for a long time. Then he said something that made my blood go cold again. "I've seen 2 crashes this year that didn't sit right," he said. "Both blamed on driver error. Both involved cars with Heliox components. Both had the same strange pattern in the skid analysis." He looked up at me. "I thought I was getting old," he said. "Seeing ghosts in data." Aaron leaned forward. "It wasn't ghosts," he said. "It was remote control." Dean's jaw clenched. "If that's true," he said slowly, "then this isn't just a company. This is an organized machine." I nodded. "And my son is tied to it." Dean glanced at the surveillance photos of my grandkids. A muscle twitched in his cheek. "This," he said softly, "is the part that makes men do unforgivable things." I swallowed. "I don't want unforgivable," I said. "I want my family safe." Dean looked at Aaron. "Can you prove this? In a way that holds?" Aaron's hand went to the canvas bag. He pulled out one drive, labeled layer logs. "I can show remote command signatures," he said. "I can show the hand reaching into the car, but you need someone who can carry it past local." Dean nodded once, already thinking. "Federal," he murmured. Then he turned to me, eyes steady. "You need to understand something," he said. "If Evan is involved, you're not dealing with a desperate man. You're dealing with someone who's convinced himself he's doing the right thing. Those men are the most dangerous." I felt my throat tighten, because I knew my son. I knew how he spoke when he wanted to win. I knew how he presented himself as reasonable, responsible, calm. I had not wanted to believe that calm could be a mask for cruelty. Outside, a vehicle engine sounded on Dean's gravel road. Dean's head snapped toward the window. His eyes narrowed. He moved fast, crossing to the front porch and peering out through the blinds. Then his voice went low. "2 cars," he said. "No headlights. Coming slow." My stomach dropped. Aaron stood, hands clenched. "They found us." Dean turned back, and for the first time I saw real anger in his face. "Then we don't answer the door," he said. "We don't negotiate. We don't pretend. We move." He went to a cabinet and pulled out a set of keys. "Basement," he said. "There's a storm room. Concrete, no windows. Get down there with your brother. I hesitated. Dean. He cut me off. Graham, now. Aaron grabbed the bag. I followed him down the basement stairs as footsteps crunched outside. The storm room was a small concrete cell with shelves and a radio. Dean shoved us inside and shut the heavy door. A metal latch clicked. We stood in darkness, listening. Above us, the front doorbell rang once. Then a second time. Then a knock. Dean's voice carried faintly through the floor, calm and firm. Who is it? A voice answered, muffled but familiar. Dad, it's me. Evan. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I pressed my ear to the door, listening. Dean's voice remained steady. Evan, why are you here without calling first? Evan's laugh came soft, controlled. We did call. Dad didn't answer. We were worried. We. Another voice murmured something. Dean said, Who's with you? A pause. Then Evan said smoothly, People who can help. Open the door, Dean. Silence. Then Dean said, No. Evan's voice sharpened. Dean, this isn't your business. Dean replied, It became my business when you showed up on my property with unmarked cars and no courtesy. Another pause. Then Evan's voice turned softer, persuasive. Dean, he said, I know you respect order. I know you respect process. My father is confused. He's in distress. He's been influenced by a man he barely knows. I have legal authority to bring him home if he's not acting in his own interest. I felt bile rise. He was building the story out loud, shaping it. Dean's voice did not waver. You don't have authority on my property, he said. If you want to do this properly, you come back with a warrant. Evan's warmth vanished entirely. Then you're choosing the hard way, he said. A sound followed, metal scraping. Then a dull thud against Dean's front door. My blood turned to ice. They're trying to force it, Aaron whispered. Dean's voice rose. Stop! I'm calling this in. Evan's voice came back, colder. Go ahead, he said. No one is coming. Another thud. Harder. The storm room felt suddenly too small, the air too close. I thought of Noah and Lily again, and an image flashed in my mind. My son at my front door, forcing his way in. Not as a child who needed me, but as a man who thought he owned me. My hands clenched into fists. I turned to Aaron, voice low. Can you do anything with the car? I asked. Aaron hesitated. What car? My Tesla, I said. They used it to bring me to you. You said you could lock the leash. Aaron's eyes narrowed, understanding forming. You want to use it, he said. Yes, I said. I want to turn their weapon into a cage. Aaron's breath hitched. That's dangerous. So is waiting, I said. Another heavy thud shook the house. Dean's voice shouted something, an order, a warning. Then a sharp crack like wood splintering. They're in, I whispered. Aaron moved fast. He pulled the small black bridge device from the bag, along with a laptop he'd grabbed from the apartment. His fingers flew across keys. What are you doing? I asked. Reaching into the nearest Heliox node, he said. If their cars are networked. Another crash above. Dean shouted again, then the sound of a scuffle. My heart lurched. Dean was alone up there. Aaron's face tightened, and he typed faster. Then the laptop pinged. He turned the screen toward me. A list of connected vehicles. 2 were labeled with generic IDs. 1 was labeled plainly. Evan Halstead, device linked. My blood went cold. Aaron's voice was tight. He drove one of the cars himself. I stared at Evan's name on the screen. My son, sitting behind a wheel, leading men to my friend's door like this was a business meeting. My grief turned into something else entirely. Aaron clicked once. A prompt appeared. Fail-safe override enabled? He looked at me. Once I do this, he said, we're no longer hiding. We're fighting. I didn't hesitate. Do it, I said. Aaron hit enter. Above us, the sound of engines shifted like cars moving. Then a muffled shout from outside. Confusion. Aaron's eyes locked on the screen, and for the first time I saw something like grim satisfaction. They're locked, he whispered. Doors won't open. Ignition will cycle but not start. They're trapped in their own vehicles. A new sound rose outside, horns blaring, angry and panicked. The thudding at Dean's door stopped. Footsteps moved fast. Dean's voice shouted again, louder now, commanding. Then sirens in the distance, faint at first, then closer. Dean had called someone. Someone had answered. Evan's voice rose outside, sharp with anger. Then another voice, frantic. We can't move the cars! Aaron's eyes flicked to me. Now, he whispered. We go now, before they adapt. Dean banged on the storm room door. Come out, he said, breath hard. They're backing off, but this is not over. We stepped out into the basement, and Dean's face was pale with adrenaline. His front door was cracked, lock splintered, but still standing. He looked at me, eyes fierce. They're not playing games, he said. If your son is part of this, he crossed a line he cannot uncross. I nodded slowly. I know, I said, and my voice sounded like stone. Dean grabbed his radio keys and a thick folder from a drawer. I have a federal contact, he said. Not local, not state. Someone who owes me. We drive to meet him in person. Aaron's eyes widened slightly. In person? He asked. Dean nodded. Because phones lie now, he said. Cars lie now. We deliver this like it's 1985. We moved fast. Dean's old truck, not connected to anything, became our lifeline. As we pulled away, I looked back at the road and saw two dark vehicles sitting at the end of Dean's driveway, hazard lights blinking like angry eyes. One of them was Evan's. I could almost see him inside, fists clenched, jaw tight, calculating the next move. My son had tried to pull me home like property. Now he would come again, not as family, as enforcement. I turned forward, gripping the truck's handle as Dean drove into the night. Aaron sat beside me, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Graham, he said quietly. Yes. His voice trembled. I think I built Guardian for you. I swallowed hard. For me? I asked. Aaron nodded, eyes wet with something he couldn't fully name. I knew I'd be erased, he whispered. So I built a way to pull you into the truth if it happened. I built a way to make the car disobey the wrong hand. My throat tightened. You saved me, I said. Aaron's face twisted. Or I cursed you, he whispered. I stared out at the dark road ahead, trees blurring past. No, I said slowly. You gave me a choice. They wanted me blind. I turned to him, voice hardening. And I'm done being blind. What happened after that was not clean. It was not simple. It was not the kind of story you tell over coffee with a peaceful ending. It was a week of running and decoding and sleepless nights, of my brother's memory returning in violent fragments, faces without names, a sterile room, a voice saying, "He won't remember this," and the cold pressure of that implant behind his ear. It was the moment Aaron finally looked at me in Dean's truck and said with sudden certainty, "Your son met me." And the moment I realized Evan hadn't just betrayed me, he had helped erase my brother. It was the moment the federal contact opened the files and went quiet, and then said, "This is not just Heliox. This is a network," and called in agents who didn't wear uniforms and didn't waste words. It was the moment Evan was finally confronted, not with my anger, not with my tears, but with evidence he could not talk his way out of. He tried anyway. He stood in a sterile interview room, suit perfect, hair combed, voice calm, and said, "I did what I had to do," like he was proud of his own cowardice. He said, "My father is old," like age erased dignity. He said, "My uncle was unstable," like memory loss was a convenient label. And when I finally sat across from him, weeks later, after the arrests and the raids and the headlines, he looked at me and said something that I will never forget. He said, "You would have ruined everything if I hadn't stepped in." I stared at my son, the boy I'd held when he was small, the man who had tried to drag me home like a broken appliance, and I felt grief so deep it almost broke me. Then I felt something else, relief. Because the truth, however ugly, is still a kind of freedom. I did not yell at him. I did not curse him. I did not beg him to remember who he used to be. I simply said, "You ruined yourself," and I stood up and walked out. I went home to my grandchildren. I replaced the locks on my doors. I turned off every remote feature on every device I owned. I put a new porch light up, brighter, stronger, and when Noah asked why, I told him the truth in a way an 8-year-old could carry. "Sometimes," I said, "you don't know you're being led until you see where you end up." Lily asked me if the Tesla was still in the driveway. I looked out at it, the sleek shape, the quiet promise of convenience, and I felt the echo of the woods in my bones. "No," I told her, "not anymore." Because the strangest part of all this, the part that still wakes me some nights, is not the betrayal. It's the knowledge that my brother, somewhere inside that damaged mind, loved me enough to build a machine that would disobey the wrong hand. The Tesla did not drive me into the woods to kill me. It drove me into the woods to break the trail. And it drove me to Aaron's apartment so I would finally stop chasing a ghost and start fighting the living.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.